A glass of whiskey held in the firelight, it glows with a warmth that speaks of history, of craftsmanship, of shared moments across continents. From the Scottish Highlands to the American heartland, from the bustling streets of Tokyo to a quiet pub in Dublin, whiskey transcends borders. It's a drink that unites us in appreciation of its complex flavors, its rich aromas, and the stories it carries within each drop. The amber liquid, born of simple ingredients like grain, water, and thyme, holds a special place in the hearts of millions. But this beloved spirit, steeped in tradition and enjoyed worldwide, is facing a modern challenge: tariffs. These taxes, designed to protect domestic industries or gain leverage in international disputes, have cast a long shadow on the global whiskey trade. What was once a free-flowing exchange of culture and commerce has become entangled in complex political and economic webs. The story of whiskey and tariffs is a compelling one. It's a tale of interconnected economies, shifting political landscapes, and the very real impact these forces have on businesses, livelihoods, and even the simple pleasure of enjoying a dram with friends. It's a story that deserves to be told, understood, and discussed, for it touches upon the very essence of how we navigate an increasingly interconnected world. Whiskey production is an art form passed down through generations. It's a craft that demands patience, precision, and an intimate understanding of the land and its bounty. In Scotland, distilleries dot the landscape, their stills reaching for the sky like ancient guardians of a time-honored tradition. The air is thick with the aroma of malted barley, peat smoke, and the promise of a fine single malt. Across the Atlantic, American whiskey tells a different story, one of innovation and boldness. From the rolling hills of Kentucky Bourbon country to the bustling cities of the East Coast, American distillers have carved their own path, creating a unique and vibrant whiskey culture. The clinking of glasses in a dimly lit speakeasy, the smooth taste of bourbon on the tongue. These are all part of the American whiskey experience. And then there's Japan, a relative newcomer to the whiskey world, yet one that has embraced the spirit with unparalleled dedication and artistry. Japanese whiskey is revered for its meticulous attention to detail, its subtle nuances, and its ability to blend tradition with modern sensibilities. A sip of Japanese whiskey is an experience in zen-like balance and harmony. Whiskey, in its many forms and origins, is more than just a drink. It's a cultural ambassador, a symbol of national pride, and a testament to the human spirit of ingenuity and tradition. It's a spirit that deserves to be celebrated and shared, unhindered by the complexities of global trade disputes. But the world of whiskey, like any global industry, is not immune to the realities of politics and economics. The imposition of tariffs, those seemingly innocuous taxes levied on imported goods, can have far-reaching and often devastating consequences for producers and consumers alike. What might seem like a dry economic policy decision in a distant capital can ripple across borders, impacting the livelihoods of farmers, distillers, bartenders, and whiskey enthusiasts around the globe. In 2018, a trade dispute between the United States and the European Union over steel and aluminum tariffs led to retaliatory tariffs on American whiskey entering the European Union. This seemingly unrelated trade spat cast a long shadow over the whiskey world, creating uncertainty and hardship for an industry built on centuries-old traditions and international collaboration. Suddenly, the smooth flow of whiskey across the Atlantic was disrupted. The 25% tariff, added to the cost of each bottle, made American whiskey less competitive in the European market. Consumers faced higher prices for their favorite bourbons and ryes, while American distillers saw their hard-earned market share dwindle. The tariffs were a stark reminder that the world of whiskey, for all its romanticism and tradition, operates within a complex web of global trade agreements, political maneuvering, and economic realities. This documentary delves into the heart of this complex issue, exploring the often overlooked human impact of tariffs and trade disputes. We'll hear from the passionate individuals whose lives are intricately intertwined with the world of whiskey, from master distillers who have dedicated their lives to perfecting their craft, to small business owners struggling to keep their doors open in the face of mounting economic pressure. We'll journey to the heart of whiskey country in Scotland, Ireland, America and beyond, witnessing firsthand the dedication, artistry and resilience of those who make this beloved spirit. We'll explore the rich history and cultural significance of whiskey, understanding why these tariffs cut so deep, impacting not just bottom lines but also national pride and a shared heritage. Most importantly, we'll examine the broader implications of this trade dispute, asking critical questions about the role of tariffs in a globalized world and the often unintended consequences of political decisions on industries, communities and individuals. This is more than just a story about whiskey. It's a story about interconnectedness, about the delicate balance of global trade, and about the very human cost of economic and political maneuvering. Our journey into the world of whiskey and tariffs begins with a basic question: what exactly are tariffs? In essence, they are taxes imposed on goods as they cross borders, typically levied on imports coming into a country. Imagine, if you will, a sort of virtual toll booth at every port and airport, where a fee is collected on certain goods before they can enter the domestic market. These tariffs can take various forms, but the most common is the ad valorem tariff, which is just a fancy Latin term for a tax calculated as a percentage of the goods value. For instance, a 25% ad valorem tariff on a bottle of whiskey worth $100 would add an extra $25 to its price, making it less appealing to consumers compared to domestically produced alternatives. But tariffs don't always target specific products like our beloved whiskey. Sometimes they are applied more broadly to entire categories of goods, such as steel, aluminum or agricultural products, as we'll see in the US-EU trade spat. These broader tariffs are often used as a blunt instrument in trade disputes, aimed at protecting domestic industries or, exerting pressure on trading partners. Understanding the mechanics of tariffs is crucial to grasping their impact on global trade, because these seemingly technical details have real-world consequences, influencing prices, supply chains, and ultimately the choices consumers make at the checkout counter. Now, you might be wondering, why use such a seemingly obscure term like tariffs? Why not simply call them taxes? Well, in a way, that's precisely what they are. Taxes on imported goods. However, the term tariff carries its own weight in international trade, often used as a tool for protectionism, retaliation, or even political maneuvering. Governments often justify tariffs as a means to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. By making imported goods more expensive, tariffs can create an artificial price advantage for domestic producers, shielding them from the full force of global competition. However, this protection comes at a cost, often leading to higher prices for consumers and potentially, hindering innovation within the protected industry. Moreover, tariffs can be used as a retaliatory measure in trade disputes, much like a game of tit for tat on the global stage. When one country imposes tariffs on another, it's not uncommon for the targeted country to respond in kind, escalating the dispute and potentially harming both economies in the process. So, while tariffs share similarities with taxes, their implications extend far beyond mere revenue collection. They are powerful tools that can shape global trade flows, influence domestic industries, and even spark international tensions. Throughout history, tariffs have played a multifaceted role in international trade, serving as both instruments of economic policy and weapons in trade wars. In the 18th and 19th centuries, tariffs were a primary source of government revenue in many countries, used to fund infrastructure projects, military expenditures, and even social programs. The American Revolution, in part, was fueled by colonial resentment towards British tariffs on tea and other goods. During the Great Depression, protectionist tariffs proliferated as nations sought to shield their struggling industries from foreign competition. However, this strategy often backfired, leading to a downward spiral of retaliatory tariffs and a contraction in global trade which actually exacerbated the economic crisis. In more recent times, tariffs have been deployed in trade disputes ranging from steel and aluminum to solar panels and washing machines. The World Trade Organization, or WTO, was established in 1995 with the aim of regulating international trade and resolving disputes. But its effectiveness has been tested by escalating trade tensions and the resurgence of protectionist measures. The use and abuse of tariffs highlight the delicate balance between protecting domestic interests and fostering a free and open global trading system. While tariffs can serve legitimate economic and political purposes, their deployment often carries unintended consequences, impacting consumers, businesses, and, well, global economic stability. In 2018, the world watched as a long-simmering trade dispute between the United States and the European Union erupted into a full-blown trade war. At the heart of the dispute were tariffs on steel and aluminum, imposed by the Trump administration on national security grounds. The EU, however, viewed these tariffs as protectionist measures and responded with retaliatory tariffs on a range of American goods, including, to the dismay of whiskey enthusiasts, American whiskey. The US argued that its steel and aluminum industries were vital to national security and needed protection from what it deemed unfair trade practices by China and other countries. The EU countered that its steel and aluminum exports posed no threat to US national security and that the tariffs were unjustified. This transatlantic trade spat, however, extended far beyond steel and aluminum. It became emblematic of broader tensions over trade imbalances, differing economic philosophies, and the future of the rules-based global trading system. The tariffs became bargaining chips in a high-stakes game of economic chess, with both sides seeking leverage and concessions. The impact of this trade war reverberated throughout the global economy, disrupting supply chains, increasing costs for businesses and consumers, and fueling uncertainty in financial markets. And within this complex web of tariffs and counter-tariffs, our beloved whiskey found itself caught in the crosshairs, a casualty of a much larger geopolitical struggle. The EU's decision to target American whiskey with a 25% tariff was no accident. It was a strategic move aimed at hitting back at the US in a sector where it would feel the pain. The US is the world's largest whiskey exporter, and Europe is its biggest market. This targeted tariff sent shockwaves through the American whiskey industry. Distilleries, both large and small, suddenly faced the prospect of losing a significant chunk of their export business. The tariff, added on top of existing taxes and shipping costs, made American whiskey less competitive in the European market, squeezing profit margins and forcing some producers to raise prices. The impact wasn't limited to the US either. European importers, distributors, and retailers who relied on American whiskey also felt the pinch. Consumers, accustomed to a certain price point for their favorite bourbons and ryes, were faced with higher prices, potentially driving them to explore alternatives. The whiskey industry, once a symbol of international cooperation and shared enjoyment, became a pawn in a larger political game. The tariffs highlighted the interconnected nature of global trade, demonstrating how seemingly unrelated disputes can have ripple effects across industries, borders, and even continents. The tariffs landed like a gut punch to the American whiskey industry, particularly in states like Kentucky, where bourbon is more than just a drink, it's a way of life, a source of pride, and a cornerstone of the economy. Generations of distillers have honed their craft, producing world-renowned bourbons that have become synonymous with American craftsmanship and hospitality. Now, these same distilleries found themselves grappling with the harsh realities of a trade war they didn't start. The tariffs added a layer of complexity and uncertainty to an industry already facing challenges. The rising cost of corn, a key ingredient in bourbon production, coupled with fluctuating global demand, had already put pressure on profit margins. The tariffs, however, threatened to upend carefully crafted business plans, forcing distilleries to make difficult decisions about pricing, production, and even their workforce. For many in the heartland of American whiskey production, the tariffs felt like a betrayal, a punishment for a dispute that had little to do with them. The livelihoods of farmers, distillery workers, truck drivers, and countless others in the supply chain were suddenly intertwined with the fate of international trade negotiations. The tariffs were a stark reminder that even in a globalized world, local communities and industries remain vulnerable to the whims of international politics and the unintended consequences of trade disputes. Kentucky, often referred to as the Bourbon capital of the world, bore the brunt of the European Union's retaliatory tariffs. The state is home to the majority of American bourbon distilleries, and its economy is, deeply intertwined with the production, distribution, and tourism associated with this iconic spirit. The tariffs therefore had a disproportionate impact on Kentucky, sending ripples of concern through its communities and businesses. The Kentucky Distillers Association, a powerful lobbying group representing the interests of the state's bourbon industry, immediately voiced its opposition to the tariffs, warning of potential job losses, reduced investment, and damage to Kentucky's bourbon heritage. The KDA argued that the tariffs were unfair, punishing an industry that had nothing to do with the original steel and aluminum dispute. For Kentucky's bourbon distillers, the tariffs presented a daunting challenge. European markets, particularly in countries like the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, had become increasingly important for American bourbon exports, representing a significant portion of their revenue and growth potential. The tariffs threatened to erode this hard-earned market share, forcing distillers to explore alternative markets or absorb the added costs, potentially impacting their bottom line. The tariffs also cast a shadow over Kentucky's bourbon tourism industry. The state attracts millions of visitors each year who come to experience the history, craftsmanship, and camaraderie of Kentucky bourbon country. The tariffs, however, raise concerns about potential price increases for bourbon-related experiences, potentially impacting tourism revenue and the livelihoods of those employed in the hospitality sector. While big bourbon brands struggled, small family-owned distilleries were hit hardest by tariffs, lacking the resources to weather the storm. Many had to raise prices, cut production, or halt expansion, putting jobs and futures at risk as their vital European markets slipped away. Tariffs didn't just hurt American bourbon. Scotland's whiskey industry also suffered, with the US being its largest export market. The Scotch Whisky Association warned of job losses and economic damage as demand dropped and rural communities felt the strain. The numbers were stark. American whiskey exports to the EU fell over 30%, while Scotch exports to the US dropped 23%, costing millions. Even American oak barrel makers felt the pain, showing how tariffs ripple through entire industries. Behind every statistic were real people, distillery workers, farmers and families facing layoffs and uncertainty. In both Kentucky and Scotland, communities built on whiskey saw their way of life threatened. Distillers, associations and whiskey lovers fought back, lobbying, campaigning and raising awareness to push for a resolution. Their united front showed the power of advocacy in defending livelihoods. Small craft distilleries, unlike industry giants, faced existential threats, unable to absorb costs or shift markets easily. The tariffs exposed just how vulnerable small businesses are in global trade disputes. Craft distilleries adapted, raising prices, seeking new markets, and leaning on community support to survive. Their resilience sparked innovation and deeper local connections. Tariffs forced distillers to innovate, experimenting with new recipes, local ingredients, and even collaborating across borders. Adversity fostered creativity and a global sense of camaraderie among craft producers. Communities rallied around their local distilleries, organizing fundraisers and promoting their products. The crisis revealed how deeply these businesses are woven into the social and economic fabric. Despite resilience, uncertainty lingers, growth plans stalled, investments paused, and the future remains unclear. Yet the spirit of craft endures, fueled by hope, innovation, and community support. The story of craft distilleries caught in the crossfire of the United States-European Union trade dispute is a testament to the indomitable spirit of entrepreneurship, the resilience of communities, and the enduring power of a well-crafted dram to bring people together. While the tariffs presented unprecedented challenges, they also revealed the remarkable adaptability, creativity, and determination of those who dedicate their lives to producing exceptional spirits. The tariffs underscored the interconnectedness of the global economy, demonstrating how seemingly distant political decisions can have profound and often unintended consequences on industries, businesses, and livelihoods far removed from the original point of contention. They served as a stark reminder that even in a globalized world, local communities and small businesses remain vulnerable to the whims of international trade and the importance of advocating for policies that support their growth and prosperity. Yet amidst the uncertainty and economic hardship, the craft distilling industry demonstrated remarkable resilience, drawing upon its deep connection to its communities, its commitment to quality and craftsmanship, and its unwavering belief in the power of a shared passion for whiskey to overcome adversity. The tariffs, while undoubtedly a challenge, also served as a catalyst for innovation, collaboration, and a renewed appreciation for the importance of supporting local businesses and the communities they sustain. The story of craft distilleries in the crossfire of the tariffs is a reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, the human spirit of ingenuity, community, and of course, a good dram of whiskey can prevail. After years of uncertainty and economic hardship, a collective sigh of relief swept through the global whiskey industry in June 2021. The United States and the European Union, after months of negotiations, agreed to a truce in their long-running trade dispute, suspending the tariffs on American whiskey and other goods that had been imposed during the Trump administration. The news, met with jubilation on both sides of the Atlantic, signaled a thawing of trade tensions and offered a glimmer of hope for the future of the whiskey trade. The suspension of the tariffs, initially for a period of 5 years, was hailed as a victory for diplomacy and a testament to the power of collective action. Industry groups, distillers, and whiskey enthusiasts who had tirelessly advocated for an end to the tariffs celebrated the news, recognizing it as a crucial step towards restoring normalcy to the global whiskey market and rebuilding the relationships that had been strained by the trade dispute. The suspension of the tariffs had an immediate and positive impact on the whiskey trade. American whiskey producers, who had seen their exports to the European Union plummet during the years of the tariffs, experienced a resurgence in demand as European importers, distributors, and consumers welcomed the return of their favorite bourbons and ryes at more competitive prices. The suspension of the tariffs was not just an economic victory, it was a symbolic triumph for the spirit of international cooperation and the shared cultural heritage embodied by whiskey. It demonstrated that even in a world often divided by political differences and economic competition, the pursuit of common ground and the celebration of shared passions could bridge divides and foster understanding. While the suspension of the tariffs was a cause for celebration, the road to recovery for the whiskey industry was not without its challenges. Years of uncertainty, lost revenue, and disrupted business plans had left their mark, and rebuilding trust, restoring supply chains, and regaining lost market share would require time, effort, and a continued commitment to collaboration. For many craft distilleries, the suspension of the tariffs provided a much-needed lifeline, allowing them to breathe a sigh of relief and refocus on their long-term goals. However, the financial strain of the previous years had taken its toll. and many faced the daunting task of rebuilding depleted cash reserves, renegotiating contracts with suppliers, and reassuring investors who had grown wary of the volatile trade environment. The suspension of the tariffs also presented an opportunity for the whiskey industry to reassess its priorities and explore new avenues for growth. The experience of the trade dispute had highlighted the importance of market diversification, and many distilleries looked beyond their traditional export markets, exploring opportunities in Asia, South America, and other regions with a growing thirst for premium spirits. The suspension of the tariffs, while a significant step in the right direction, was not a panacea for the challenges facing the whiskey industry. However, it provided a platform for renewed dialogue, collaboration, and innovation, setting the stage for a more stable and prosperous future for the global whiskey trade. While the suspension of the tariffs brought a welcome respite to the whiskey industry, a sense of cautious optimism pervaded the celebrations. The trade truce, while a positive step, remained fragile, subject to the vagaries of international politics and the ever-shifting dynamics of global trade. The underlying trade tensions that had sparked the tariff war remained unresolved. The United States and the European Union continued to grapple with issues related to steel and aluminum tariffs, aircraft subsidies, and digital taxes, any one of which had the potential to reignite trade tensions and threaten the hard-won truce on whiskey. The suspension of the tariffs was also time-limited, set to expire in 5 years unless renewed by both parties. This looming deadline created a sense of uncertainty for the whiskey industry, as businesses were hesitant to make long-term investment decisions or fully commit to rebuilding their export markets without knowing whether the tariffs might return. The fragile nature of the trade truce served as a reminder that the whiskey industry, despite its rich history, cultural significance, and global appeal, remained vulnerable to the forces of geopolitics and the complexities of international trade. Just as the whiskey industry began to breathe a collective sigh of relief, a new cloud appeared on the horizon, casting a shadow over the hard-won progress and reigniting fears of a renewed trade war. In a move that sent shockwaves through the global whiskey industry, the European Union announced its intention to impose a 25% tariff on American whiskey starting in June 2023, a direct consequence of a long-running dispute over subsidies to aircraft manufacturers. The news of the impending tariffs was met with dismay and, honestly, a fair bit of frustration by American whiskey producers who had just begun to recover from the previous round of tariffs and were now facing the prospect of another costly trade barrier. Industry groups, caught off guard by the announcement, scrambled to mobilize their resources, urging the United States and the European Union to find a negotiated solution and avert another damaging trade war. The European Union's decision to target American whiskey once again highlighted the vulnerability of the industry to being used as a pawn in broader trade disputes, often bearing the brunt of political maneuvering and economic retaliation. The tariffs threatened to derail the industry's fragile recovery, stifle innovation, and dampen consumer demand, potentially leading to job losses and economic hardship. The looming threat of new tariffs served as a stark reminder that the global trade environment remained volatile and unpredictable, and that the whiskey industry, despite its best efforts to adapt and innovate, could not escape the consequences of geopolitical tensions and the complexities of international trade. The story of whiskey and tariffs, as we've journeyed through its twists and turns, reveals a complex interplay of history, culture, politics, and economics. It's a story of interconnectedness, highlighting how a seemingly simple act, raising a glass of whiskey, is intricately linked to global trade flows, political decisions made in distant capitals, and the livelihoods of individuals and communities across continents. The imposition and subsequent suspension of tariffs have tested the resilience of the whiskey industry, particularly the smaller craft distilleries that form the heart and soul of this spirited craft. Yet, amidst the challenges, we've witnessed remarkable adaptability, unwavering dedication, and a strong sense of community. Distillers faced with adversity have innovated, collaborated and found new ways to share their passion for whiskey with the world. As we look to the future, the path forward for the whiskey industry remains intertwined with the complexities of global trade and the unpredictable nature of international relations. The threat of new tariffs looms, a stark reminder that the industry's fate is not entirely in its own hands, yet amidst the uncertainty there's a spirit of hope, a belief in the enduring power of craft, community and a shared passion for this timeless spirit. The whiskey world, with its rich history and global reach, will continue to adapt, innovate and navigate the complexities of the 21st century, ensuring that the tradition of raising a glass and the stories shared over its amber glow will continue to be told for generations to come. As our glasses are raised in celebration or contemplation, it's easy to forget the journey that brought that whiskey to our lips. We savor the complex flavors, the warmth of the spirit, the camaraderie it inspires. But the story of whiskey, as we've discovered, extends far beyond the distillery walls and the familiar clinking of glasses. It's a story woven into the very fabric of global trade, a testament to the interconnectedness of our modern world. From the barley fields of rural America to the bustling streets of London, from the rolling hills of Scotland to the sophisticated bars of Tokyo, whiskey transcends borders, cultures, and even time itself. It's a shared language of flavor and tradition, a testament to the human desire to connect, to celebrate, and to find solace in a shared experience. The tariffs, those seemingly technical instruments of trade policy, have served as a stark reminder of this interconnectedness. They've shown us that a decision made in a boardroom or a government office thousands of miles away can ripple across continents, impacting not just bottom lines, but also livelihoods, communities, and even the simple pleasure of enjoying a dram with friends. The whiskey industry, with its rich history and global reach, stands as a microcosm of the interconnectedness of our modern world, a potent symbol of how our lives, our economies, and even our shared passions are inextricably linked. The story of whiskey and tariffs has also offered a glimpse into the often unseen hand of global trade. The complex web of agreements, regulations, and political maneuvering that shape the flow of goods and services across borders. It's a system that, at its best, fosters cooperation, innovation, and economic growth, connecting producers and consumers in a mutually beneficial exchange. But as we've witnessed, this system is not without its flaws, its vulnerabilities, and its potential for unintended consequences. The tariffs, imposed in the name of protecting domestic industries or gaining leverage in international disputes, have exposed the fragility of this system, demonstrating how easily the flow of trade can be disrupted with far-reaching implications for businesses, communities, and individuals. They've shown us that even in a globalized world where goods and services move freely across borders, the spectre of protectionism and the allure of economic nationalism can resurface, threatening to unravel the delicate fabric of international cooperation. The whiskey industry, caught in the crossfire of these trade tensions, has become an unlikely advocate for the importance of a rules-based, predictable trading system. Distillers, industry associations, and whiskey enthusiasts alike have found common ground in their calls for dialogue, cooperation, and a recognition that in an interconnected world, our fates are intertwined, and that the pursuit of narrow self-interest can often lead to collective harm. The whiskey industry's experience serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that the benefits of global trade are not guaranteed, that the pursuit of open markets and fair competition requires constant vigilance, and that the choices we make, as consumers, as citizens, and as members of a global community, have the power to shape the future of trade and the well-being of our interconnected world. Beyond the immediate impact on the whiskey industry, the story of tariffs has offered us a unique lens through which to examine broader themes of history, politics, and economics. It's a story that stretches back centuries to the earliest days of international trade. when tariffs were used not just as a source of government revenue, but also as tools to protect domestic industries, project national power, and even shape the course of empires. The tariffs imposed on whiskey in recent years are but the latest chapter in this long and often contentious history. They reflect the enduring tension between the forces of globalization and the pull of nationalism, the desire for open markets and the impulse to protect domestic interests, the allure of cooperation and the temptation of economic rivalry. The whiskey industry, with its deep roots in history and its global reach, stands at the intersection of these forces. It's a reminder that even in our modern interconnected world, the echoes of the past continue to resonate, that the choices we make today are shaped by the decisions of those who came before us, and that the pursuit of a more just and equitable global trading system is an ongoing process, fraught with challenges but also brimming with possibilities. The story of whiskey and tariffs invites us to sip on this rich tapestry of history, politics and economics, to appreciate the complexities of the global trade system, and to recognize that the choices we make as consumers, as citizens, and as members of a global community have the power to shape not just the future of the whiskey industry, but also the course of international relations and the well-being of our interconnected world. As we raise a final toast to the future of whiskey, we do so with a sense of cautious optimism. The industry, despite the challenges it has faced, has emerged from the shadow of tariffs with a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper appreciation for the importance of collaboration, and an unwavering belief in the enduring appeal of this timeless spirit. The tariffs, while disruptive and costly, have served as a catalyst for innovation and adaptation. Distillers, forced to confront uncertainty and explore new avenues for growth, have emerged stronger, more resilient and more deeply connected to their communities and to their craft. The future of whiskey, much like the spirit itself, is best enjoyed one sip at a time, savoring the complexities, appreciating the nuances, and embracing the unknown. While challenges will undoubtedly arise, as they always have throughout whiskey's long and storied history, the industry's ability to adapt, to innovate, and to bring people together over a shared passion for this timeless spirit suggests that the future of whiskey remains bright, indeed. So let us raise a glass to the future of whiskey, a future where tradition and innovation go hand in hand, where collaboration and sustainability guide the industry's path, and where the simple act of sharing a dram continues to connect people across cultures, borders, and generations.